That's the wrong link, I think. Apologies. So Adina, let's talk a bit about some of the follow-up for CI on Get Nighthawk to make sure that you're supported and are able to bite off, start, so to speak.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Shridi, over to you. I think we're all ready.
All right. Before we begin anything on the call, any newcomers today? We got a bunch of old timers and a couple of people returning back to us. But I can't really spot any newcomers. So, all right. Welcome to the Meshery Dev Call, everybody. We take a day every week to discuss everything related to Meshery and related projects. Feel free to add any topic to the agenda. We're quite liberal that way. If you see my screen and if it's visible to you, please do go ahead and add your name to the attendees list, similar to what Utkarsh and Lee just did. You'll find a link in the chat. If you can't access it, speak up, we'll get you access. Apart from that, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shridi. Pranav I think this is his first time on this call. Pranav.
Pranav, please do go ahead. Give your third introduction to us. Pranav, if you could unmute and speak.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize I was on mute. Yeah, hi guys, I'm Pranav. I'm a third year student in India, and I've been for the better part of this week, working with the community to on various issues, just exploring around. So I'm also just sticking around this call to see what's going to happen and to learn more, hopefully. So thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. All right, on to the agenda then, if nobody else has anything to add. All right, so interesting week. We have a Meshery version 0.5 release coming up, and that's pretty exciting, and that we'll be discussing a couple of items related to that on this particular call. If you want to contribute, there's a link to the issues pertaining to it. Go pick something up, go assign yourself to it, and push it through. You're very welcome to do that. If you have any questions, you're very free to ask them on this call or engage us on Slack or any way that you want to. Post that, I don't believe we have any other announcements on this particular call. If not, we can jump into the agenda.
Shridi, is it worth maybe, that's a great looking project board. Or it's a start to a project board. Do you want to share that for a moment and give people a sense of what they might be able to, what we've got dangling? Like, what do we have left to finish off before we can make this release?
Sure. All right, you'll find a small summary of the issues on this particular doc. Go read into it, go read a little bit about it. And after you've done that, and after it makes sense in your head, go pick out issues pertaining to it. I don't believe you'll be able to create issues pertaining to this at the current moment without prior discussion, but post that, you can go pick up any issue that is currently on our radar and go push it through, go work on it, ensure that it goes through before we go forward with the release. You'll find links to both of these documents and the issues in the meeting minutes.
Nice. So question for everyone. The first, Abhishek, do you want to talk about the first beta release? What people should expect, what they should test, what we should do?
Sure. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Good. Okay. Uh, Let me just. Oh yeah. Okay. So in this beta release, we have put in a couple of features. Starting from Meshery operator, which is a control, which is a manager application that runs inside the cluster, and which is also responsible for uh, uh, controlling two of our custom controllers, which are Mesh Sync and Meshery Broker. So Mesh Sync is an application, a custom controller that scans for the state inside the cluster, basically the current state of the cluster, and gives back the data. In short, and Meshery Broker is nothing but a, a queuing application where you can publish and consume messages whenever and wherever. So so basically, MeshSync uses Meshery broker to communicate with Meshery server to stream back data from there. So yeah, so these are the new features that are in. Uh,
Nice.
Abhishek, you got muted. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Nice. Shriti, can you do me a favor and pop open the other link there? Yeah, there we go. So
Sounds
great. So folks, we're going off to do a significant release for Meshery. This is we're halfway there. We're halfway to prod conceptually, right? Like as close as we can tell. A number of you have worked on some new architectural components or that are net new to the project, or you've significantly like rewritten or restructured existing components. So Meshery CTL is getting quite the uplift. The adapters, like, all, entirely rewritten. And then the other components that Abhishek was just mentioning. So we need to do some testing. We need to write up this stuff to both inform users of what's going on and what those components are, what they do, also to help get the word out to those that don't know about Meshery and who might come to use it, might find value. So there's the Meshery docs needs a little bit of help. As we're doing that, there are some, I guess, some featured deep dives, some blog posts that can be written, and there's an opportunity for each of you to get your name out a little bit, also kind of mark your name on an aspect of the project. So an aspect that you're familiar with. That other doc that Shrita was showing, there's a number of, so I guess it's here actually, these issues here, we want to get these assigned. Or rather, I'll say, if these are interesting to you, if you worked on them, go ahead and self-assign. Probably toward the end of the week. If they're not self-assigned, I'll assume that one of the core maintainers will pick it up and okay, now Abhishek's back. Good.
Yep.
yeah, I'm so sorry. My Zoom call just got crashed. Yeah. So,
Yeah, no problem. So Abhishek, the thing we're talking about is people picking up these doc issues. Who would like to write one of these but hasn't signed up yet? Or which of these aren't assigned? I think so. Anirudh, you've got one, document the system context. I think Asuko has, his name's on the mesh sync one, which is great. But we've got MeshKit and the Meshery adapter library. No pressure. Mihu, is that one that you're interested in?
Yeah, I've already started slowly writing, working on a blog post.
Nice.
I have two questions. What sort of timeline are we looking at?
Yeah,
That's
It's a great question. I think that it's a little bit hard to definitively say it. It kind of if let's just assume that we don't find any bugs in this current beta, which like the likelihood of that happening is probably pretty low. We've got a couple of things in Meshery CTL that have yet to be completely tied off. Context should have been tied off a couple of weeks ago. But it's still kind of hanging out there. I would anticipate that that we'll end up going through either one or two more beta releases, maybe switching it over to like a release candidate, which is just sort of a further way of saying that like this thing's even. I don't know why I'm explaining that to you, but anyway, that we're getting closer. I think the reality is it'll probably be like another 2.5 weeks, I suspect, of activities of going through some tests, kind of validating that really the newer components work well. The adapters and that rewrite, those have been being baked and tested for a while, and those are generally sitting in a fairly pretty place, like the console adapter, for example, the Istio one, the Linker D. The others, Traffic Mesh, Kuma, I forget some of the Nginx SM and things like they, not as much because they just don't get as exercised as much. There is some confidence that that they will handle themselves if they run into an error because they're based on MeshKit. Okay, so I'm kind of rambling and saying, yeah, I think it would be like about 2.5 weeks would be my guess. I would hope for earlier, but it'll just take a while.
Yeah, it takes a while to write and think as well. Maybe draw a picture too.
Yeah, and chew gum at the same time.
So I, as I said, sort of like a feature block on Meshery adapter library. I've started that one, and could bake in maybe a bit about MeshKit as well. So the timeline was the first question. The other question is for this feature block. Is this the layer 5 NG branch? This should be based on the markup, the MDX format, or the master?
Great question.
The MD.
Yes, yeah, great question. That it should be for in MDX for the next.
Yeah. Good.
Nice.
Then I can answer. Then I can answer the question that I posed on Slack and in this document that Shriti showed, which were about the format.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, good. Thanks for good. Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another one about Meshery broker, Meshery operator. Abhishek, I suppose we should ping Dhruv, or I'm sorry, not Dhruv, Dev, and see if he's going to be able to have time. And if not, you'll be putting pen to paper.
Sure, I'll pick it up. I'll ping up Dave on this.
I think Utkarsh on the extensibility. Is Utkarsh? Oh, he's not with us. That's perfect. He's not here, so he's.
I am.
Oh. Oh, okay. Is okay. Well, extensibility. I think you actually did. We actually got a lot of this done. Are you okay picking up that assignment?
Yeah, sure.
Nice. All right. What do we have unassigned still? So the broker, the operator, that's between Abhishek and Dev. Extensibility. Okay, there's GraphQL. Dhruv, is that you?
Oh, yeah, it is me, but it got delayed a bit. So, like, probably this weekend, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Sure. I suspect, now saying this out loud, like one of the things that might help is, geez, is there a template for what that blog might look like? That might help some of you as you go to do it. I should probably get off my rump and go write one. That might help. By the way, to Michael's point, if folks have illustrations or you need help with illustrations, just signal. Like if Augustine is here and is quite good with illustrations. I mean, he can do them to the extent that he's doing them, they'll be done in something of a consistent way. And so please don't hesitate to engage with Augustine, who's on the call.
Excellent. The blog post, I thought that'd be sort of like stealing layout from was the one about Istio multi-tenancy, because it had both source code and illustrations and text.
Yeah, that's about right. The nerdier, the better, I guess. Like the one. I mean, yep. If anyone has a hankering and Michael, actually, you've done this in the past. Like if anyone wants to do a demo of what they've done or of that feature, either if you'd like to do it, if you'd like help doing it, if you'd like for someone else to do it, but have it included in your post, like we can, I guess, go nuts. That will help. I'll help. Others here will help. I think, by the way, just for me to talk out loud on that for a moment, one of the things when I think about making a recording of showing off a feature, this is just my personal preference, is that it's not my voice there. I'd rather that it was someone else's. And so I've given some thought to maybe we'll have a voiceover at some point. We will have somebody helping with that. So there's a world of possibilities. I think the last doc issue for this release is on the Meshery database. So the Postgres database. Between the broker, the operator, and the database, Abhishek, that's a lot. One of these maybe I should take on and help out with. And that way it can also be an example for others. Michael, what you'd said makes perfect sense. Like you can't go wrong, like in terms of. But yeah, there are, you're right. By the way, just Drew brings up a good point about like availability of assets and, graphics and logos and things. So there are brand kits. There's a brand kit for Meshery operator, for Mesh Sync, for Meshery. There's templated Google Slides, templated. There's a lot. There's all of these things are in the Google Drive. Like there's quite a bit in there. So don't. And if you can't find it, or if you need something new, yeah, please just raise your hand. Actually, Augustine is probably the person that I'll point you to again, because both he'll be capable of creating something new. He's kind of reworking some of the templates that are there and available to everyone. So, and those templates are there for you for this purpose. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, then we've got, I think there's a couple of other like feature or bugs that are outstanding for the V0 for this release. Let me ask this, because this is just a point of, this is one of the things that I'd love to see. The ability to show the adapter version number in Meshery UI, is that just a matter of, is that available through adapters today? Or is there still some work to go on MeshKit for that?
Well, I think we had a discussion about this with, can't remember his name. And then the current, so I think we agreed that using the gRPC API would be a good way to return this type of information. We started discussing a bit how to extend the API, where and then it sort of stalled. So I think it's not nothing happened since then.
Okay.
But I think it would need a change. And then, you know, when you start looking at that, then you say, oh, maybe we should have a sort of a general endpoint that's called, you know, get info or something, that you know that all components provide to get info about this component, like version and name, and then suddenly the issue gets a bit bigger. So I don't think. Yeah.
I agree. I totally see it going that way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and especially if it's a mesh kit, if there's just this standard like /info endpoint or / get,
Yeah.
what a great thing for anything that's using mesh kit. You're able to see service status, maybe at a deeper level, whatever that status is to that particular component that, and yeah, a little bit of, right, that doesn't require me, or I mean, like, I guess I'm trying to say that in the most encouraging way, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah.
Abhishek.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do. We can pick it up.
Cool. And not, from my perspective, but from my perspective, probably wouldn't hold up this release because it doesn't, not critical to the functionality, but is a okay. Well, good.
But I think it could be really, sorry, I think it could be really useful to have sort of like, an expected endpoint, even though you have to implement it in the different proto buffers and gRPC interfaces, and use some time to sort of like discuss, whether we should have a couple of fixed fields or a map and where it should live and stuff like this.
I agree.
Yeah, sorry.
No, and I wish there was, I wish, like, it's pretty funny. Like, I wish that there was, like, how has this not been done already? How is there not just something of a central spec or central proto that, kind of like simple network management protocol, SNMP, or like Prometheus, like the people are implementing service status counters, like, every microservice needs this. Like, I'm sure it's been done thousands of times over. Okay, so, and actually, not to blow that up and expand it even more and make it even harder to get done, is like when you toss in the concept of something like open telemetry and use of it in MeshKit as a framework for instrumenting the instrumenting the components that are using MeshKit. It's like, oh, well, you would think that a project like that might have a central reference for /info, like this thing that we're, so, yeah. Okay. Well, what do we have next? So the last topic on that is a call for testing. A lot of us will, if you're contributing to these components, you'll build them and run them locally. And it's been pretty obvious from some recent users that not a lot of us are deploying Meshery into Kubernetes, because it's a kind of a broken flow. And so Vishal, who's on the call, Husseina, or I'm just calling out a couple of names, Adina, like there's a high value in this, in everyone, but maybe each of you specifically, taking the latest release of Meshery and deploying it into Kubernetes, like either through the manifests or through Helm. I think we're going to find there's some hiccups, and that flow, we should have that flow down pat pretty well. So your help would be great. Nice. I don't know if Rodolfo is on for the next.
I believe he's not. He was supposed to be, but well, we'll take it up next call, I suppose. Navendra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen. So we have two new features for Meshery CDL. The first one is we have a context flag for the system reset command to temporarily change the context. So I'll just show it. So if I have I have three contexts in my config.yaml file, and the current context is set to local. So if I want to reset it to, let's say, the test context, I can just run a Meshery system reset and the context test. Can you see it? And it will use the test context to temporarily, and it will reset to it. And if I try an context that is not there in the config.yaml file, it will throw an error. It will show the available context. So that is one thing. And another feature is Meshery CTL now has the global verbose flag. So this can be used anywhere throughout Meshery CTL. It is available globally. Like it can be used to print the debug logs, basically everything verbose. But we don't have that many debug logs currently, so we might need to add them along the way as we build more components for Meshery CTL. Yeah, that's it. Anyone have anything else to add to it?
Yes, I think this is really good. Following conventions as we discussed. How about, I mean, not that this is sort of part of this issue, because I think it would be quite a lot of work that to propagate this to like the adapters, so that you could, when you set it to verbose, that you also get verbose logging from the adapters and maybe other components like the server.
I'm not really sure.
No, I'm just sort of like in general, would that be sort of something that would be, I think it would be really helpful, but does it make sense? Because often, when you want to debug, there is relatively little features in Meshery CTL, and a lot of things happen in the adapters and the server. Then it could be really useful to get more information, verbose logging from the adapters and the server. Or maybe this has been.
Yeah, like particularly to the extent that we're moving to a distroless base image, which like removes a lot of your common tooling and stuff like and actually there's a there's a spec that is not very well written or written very much, and the spec, it goes by the name of, I think it's Meshery messaging system, which refers to like error codes and how we've intentionally set aside room for error codes and what they are and what their probable cause is, how to remediate them, etc. But like as part of that, sort of there's a collection of concerns around what we were just talking about for the /info endpoint or whatever the name is, but just that concept, the concept of then having a structured framework for facilitating troubleshooting of error codes that might arise. And then along with that, is it, precisely what you're pointing out as well, is like, well, multiple ways to get, like, hey, the logging that's going on, you're able to use Meshery CTL to examine logs from, I'm a little confused on this. You guys might need to tell me, like, you use Meshery CTL to examine some logs. You'll see a certain level of logs that come out of those Docker containers, but you'll miss quite a bit of, debug that you would otherwise see if you had compiled and were running the adapter locally. And is that verbosity that that you actually, I think a lot of times you'll miss if you run Meshery CTL system logs, which under the covers right now runs a Docker Compose logs. You get information back from all of the adapters, logs from them, but unless I'm mistaken, it's not as deep of a level as you get if you've built and run the adapter locally.
I'm not quite sure. If I remember, I didn't look closer. I think it's the same. You get the same.
Oh, okay.
And I think the adapters, or at least the one I was looking at, is sort of like a little bit the same issue as with Meshery CTL. There are not so many debug statements, and a challenge there is also how do you sort of like have a good plan to what is debug and what is not debug. But it's the logging framework in Meshkit, Meshery Adapter Library, is prepared to have a debug level as well. But it's not sort of like that you can switch it on with a flag. So being able to switch it on by some means, using Meshery CTL, so that this is propagated to the adapters and switching on debug, I think that would be a very useful feature. Also with respect to distro-less, where it's even gets more difficult, to shell into the container and have a look at things directly. So really depending on good logging and good debug logging as well.
Vineeth and Anirudh, do you guys want to talk a little bit about sort of the streaming logs and some of the effort that was put into place to show log streams in Meshery UI?
So I guess we looked into using WebSockets for that. Using a WebSocket to synchronize logs between a virtually made session on the server.
Right.
So that was how we thought about streaming logs in the UI.
Good. And then if for nothing, okay, yep. If for nothing else, then just to say that a section of the Meshery, like this could be exposed in Meshery UI as well, I guess is what I was, the short of it. So nice. Okay. There's infrastructure code to go on. Next topic. Right.
Okay. We have a discussion of Meshery CTO pending. Anirudh, I think you wanted to.
Which discussion?
Right.
Yeah, you might want to start this off. The platform support for Kubernetes.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Now, Shri, if you don't mind heading into that design spec there, so with the advent of the context command for Meshery CTL, when we go to support context, we go that support for context touches each and every Meshery CTL system command. related to that, but also just independent of that, is the ability for Meshery CTL to, when you go to start Meshery, if you run Meshery CTL system start, that maybe you want to spin up some Docker containers on your local host, or maybe you'd like to deploy Meshery in cluster, in Kubernetes cluster. So it's been a common ask. And so this design spec that will eventually be sort of copied, probably copied and pasted into a GitHub issue, it speaks to how to bring support for deploying from Meshery CTL to deploy into a Kubernetes cluster. So how to make sure that when you do Meshery CTL system start, if you want for Meshery to go into Kubernetes, to be deployed in Kubernetes, how to make that happen. Nivendi, do you want to talk about the considerations that you've made?
Yeah, the first thing was to whether we have to use Meshkit in Meshery CTL, because it has a lot of predefined support for the deploying the manifest files and stuff like that. So yeah, as Mikhail suggested, we definitely need to use Meshkit. And yeah, we also like discussed about supporting the air gap deployments, which I think would be great for on-premise deployments. And it seems like we already have users wanting that support, that sort of support. So like as Lisa suggested, we could maybe bundle those manifest files into Meshery CTL, which may need some discussion. That's it. Like we need to discuss about the Helm charts, whether to use them for deployment or not. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to discuss, and we need to like come up with a design spec.
Nice. So, oh yeah, boy, how do we structure this? I guess, you know, one of so I think on the first point of like use of Helm charts or use of Kubernetes manifests, either way, I don't think that we will go wrong. Like, you know, so long as we do one of them, we'll be in a better place. A couple of thoughts about the use of Helm. So part of the value of using Helm here is that you're able to use templatized, you're able to go over to a values.yaml, and given that those values have been templatized in the rest of the, you know, the Kubernetes manifests, you've got a relatively easy place to control the config of that, you know, the options for that chart. We have support for Helm built into Meshkit already. And so on the surface, that looks like a good way to go, or I think it is a good way to go. It's not a wrong way to go. In consideration of just doing manifests directly, is that it falls in line with the structure that we have today for kind of directly using and compiling a Docker Compose file. That the values.yaml in the Helm chart ends up being pretty similar to the config.yaml that Meshery CTL has. Because config.yaml says things like, what adapters do you want to run? What channel and what version do you want to be on? What token do you want to use? You know, just, I think the list will expand a little bit. What Kubernetes cluster are you wanting to provision to? And we end up having that kind of built into Meshery CTL. I think that I think my negative half a point here is that it felt like it was just, it wouldn't take us a couple of weeks to get there. Like it was sort of falls in line with kind of what we're doing today around rewriting YAML files directly. I'm not articulating it very well. It's not a very, it's not a strong argument, but food for thought.
Well, where would you get the Kubernetes manifests from? I mean, in runtime, copy down from the download. Sorry, I mean download from the GitHub repo from this folder. I know it is in this folder, but do you download it from the internet, or would you package it before?
I think we're on a path to suggest. Currently, we download it, or like if you look at what we do with Docker Compose, we download it. You don't, as a user, you generally don't feel that because it sort of happens implicitly as you either do the bash installer. And whenever you run Meshery system start, like it does it, and then you're not really paying attention to the fact that that happens. That is bothersome for. There's a couple of issues maybe with that approach. In the past, it had worked well for us helping people keep up to speed with the latest releases of Meshery, because they can just refresh from GitHub, like pull down a new Docker Compose file that has additional adapters, stuff like that, for letting them reset to factory defaults. But it is also, as we created 2 release channels, that ability sort of created an issue with like pulling down the wrong version, resetting to the wrong version of the factory defaults, because you might cross stream your release channels, but that's been corrected so that we don't have that issue. Going forward though, like logically, it does make a fair bit of sense that as you go to make a Meshery CTL release, that if it comes bundled with these manifests, either for Kubernetes, these installer manifests, whether it's for Kubernetes or for Docker, that you don't have that versioning, you don't have that concern about versioning, because it's like the version appropriate manifests are right there bundled with your client. It is, that does, instead of just downloading a single binary, like you end up downloading a few files, since there's a bash installer, I don't think that that's an issue. That's like kind of behind the scenes. People don't have to worry about it. Bundling some of this stuff into the CTL package means that supporting air gap things is maybe a little bit easier, because you kind of got all that you need locally already. Where we end up right now, we're kind of straddling the line between when every time, if you're familiar with kubectl, whenever someone goes to invoke a kubectl command, it will reference your local kube config on the fly from disk, or from the command line if you're providing it. Every single time you execute the command, you have to have a kube config. It'll source from there, and it needs to know. It's not a long-lived process. It doesn't know if you change something in between one command to the next. And so, same thing for Meshery CTL. You've got a mesh config or a config.yaml that needs to be read from, and sort of this struct, like the ones that are in this doc, need to be refreshed every single time that you go to execute a Meshery CTL command. And so as such, like some of those things that are stored within config.yaml, just something as simple as what adapters to run, means that Meshery CTL reads from that file, says, oh, you only want to run the console adapter. Okay, as we go to invoke Docker Compose up, the compose file needs to only list the console Meshery server and the console adapter and nothing else. So every time we need to like rewrite those files, and that's okay. Like from an efficiency perspective, there's no issue with respect to efficiency, but just for getting correct what that person, for each individual context that's in the config.yaml, we're not separately storing an individual Docker Compose file, one for each environment, one for each context. There's just a central one that's rewritten each and every time that someone invokes a Meshery command. And that means that, Meshery CTL itself ends up baking in or hard coding in a little bit of like, the structure and knowledge of it bakes in the ability to write out those manifests, Docker or Kubernetes or Docker. So we're kind of straddling the fence between needing to source from an external, manifest and all that it can contain, which like and having that built into Meshery CTL, I don't think it's the right thing for us to go over and build in all of the things you can put into Kubernetes manifest. It's not the. So a couple of things, I guess. I think we're on a path to. Well, we're on a path to or I think that what we currently have for how context works for Docker Compose works pretty well. It might be nice if we start to bundle in the compose file and the manifest files such that it's not absolutely required for when you do a Meshery CTL system start that it for the first time has to reach out, because that could cause a hiccup if you're in an air-gapped environment. And so we have some controls. Yeah, so we're almost to a really sweet spot sort of in today's design. It's actually it's kind of a long set of conversations that I've had a number of times with different folks.
Well, yes, I see all that. The one point to consider is that's why I thought, sort of thinking about suggesting Helm is a parameterization of the manifests. Like I think for the air gap deployment, you would want to change a couple of parameters with respect to where to get the images from, and
Totally.
maybe and of course we can do that also with manifests if we do the templating. There is templating included in MeshKit that you can use for the manifests, but then you need to of course turn the manifests into templates with the placeholders so that this works. And the support for is not very advanced. I think it's just replacing single and simple variables. Not quite sure, but anyway, and in Helm this is sort of like baked in right from the start, the parameterization, and so this is sort of at one point we'd like to consider, because I think soon maybe when you think a local environment, you always have one node. But when you deploy to a proper environment, production for instance, then probably you will have several nodes and you would like to have several replicas of your things, and then you're already in the game of parameterizing your manifest, for instance. Just sort of like a point, yeah. I think.
You definitely have to support exactly what you said. Like you definitely have to let people use. So right now, I think in Meshery CTL, it identifies where the registry is, I think, as a global variable. And if that's not the case, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to let people specify a different registry. And in many respects, like the config.yaml, all of anything that's inside config.yaml, the Meshery CTL config, those all need to be parameters that are, all of those things in there do need to be parameterized in Docker Compose and in Kubernetes manifests. And so all the things you just said are totally true. And so I don't have a strong, this isn't as strong, like I'm equally as happy to, for my part, to go with Helm. Who else has got something to add to help us move forward quickly?
Yeah, so the registry stuff that you talked about is true, but also we need to take care of that in adapters as well, because adapters fetch their service mesh binaries and or even the distro images, or probably some supporting manifests. They fetch it from outside, so we need to define or introduce registry terminology in adapters as well.
Yeah, and so and maybe part of what you're saying there is that so Meshery CTL, Meshery. I don't know. Does that affect?
So what I was saying is that Meshery CTL, if Meshery CTL is going to have this config of configuring the registry, then ideally in other places they'll have to inherit from that one place. Like right now they have their own way of managing their endpoints and places they fetch assets from. So we'll have to centralize them is what I mean.
Yeah. So the config.yaml for that context sounds like the source is the source of truth for how a given Meshery deployment is configured. The mechanics of how those values are disseminated. I guess, yeah, Michael, maybe that's one way of reflecting on it is sort of maybe the inverse of like as an adapter is spun up, if the source of truth for where it should be seeking out the local artifactory or the local place to grab service mesh binaries or I don't know, or if that's provided from the config.yaml, does that bear weight on use of Helm or direct manipulation of YAML? I don't know. What else? Are there any other points, thoughts that help?
Navindu, you could probably help us here.
Yeah, I agree to what Atul was saying. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. If there is nothing else to discuss on this particular one, we could probably. Is there anything else? Anybody? I think that's the end of the agenda today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to conclude if we can. That way, the vendor doesn't get blocked because I think this is his. I think he needs to. Yep, yeah, he does. He has to figure out is he going to use the Kubernetes Go client from either way. He's going to use Meshkit, I think, or like I'm assuming there's other plus ones behind the import of Meshkit. Is that right? Oh yeah, Michael's.
Yeah, logging, for instance. The logging handlers and the unified sort of log message format. I think that would also be a
for Meshkit, yeah.
I think, yeah, for Meshkit. Yeah.
Anybody have
there, right?
Totally. Anybody have a negative one against use of Meshkit here? Nope. Okay, good. That's it. All right. Silence is golden. And then here, like whatever gets us there faster in some respects, like there's work for. I think part of my thinking was like, hey, we need those, we need templatized things. We're going to be, we're going to empower the user with these parameters. They're going to affect, they're going to take effect in a couple of places. The mesh config, the config.yaml, we kind of sort the source of truth for for the configuration of any given deployment. Should we use, like, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna retract it because like should we use customize to help with just like the customize is built for this exact use case around like you have different environments, so you sort of compile your YAMLs in that way. You provided environment specific parameters. And so I don't like it would be nice. It would be helpful to give something that would give a +1 for me more to Helm would be some of these users. So speaking to a bank here in Austin, a user at a bank here in Austin that wants to use Meshery, they want to use it offline. They want to know what those instructions are for how to deploy it, and they use Helm as like the Kubernetes package manager. And so if there was some other thing like in terms of this decision, if there was something else that was like additive to that, like, oh, okay, you user already have Helm in your environments. Here's how this approach where we're using Helm is going to help you with, is going to like, parlay with anyone who might also be using Helm. Like that would.
Yeah, so I think the plus would be maybe that it makes the user of Meshery more independent, so they can leverage like the Helm chart without having to use Meshery CTL.
Right. Especially if they have that chart local.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, especially if that chart ends up getting bundled and then it becomes available locally. Like, it doesn't have to be local, but I guess what I mean is, to your point, if they're really comfortable with Helm and they want to just use Helm to do the thing, like in some respects, like bundling them both kind of makes sense if we're going to support letting people apply manifests or do things through Helm. And this is kind of what I mean is like this conversation is kind of, for me, it's kind of a wash of like, well, I don't, so I really don't, it really doesn't matter to me. I would like to unblock.
Yeah, so it sounds a bit more complicated using Helm in a way, because you have to, it's not just one file you download, it's a bunch, it's a directory or a chart. Or wasn't there a discussion about to have the Meshery or layer 5 Helm repo?
And there is, all right. Yeah, the chart does get published to, well, that's part of our issue is like right now we don't have, this is kind of like the only, like, it's the only +0.5 that I can give to the manifest is more or less what you're saying, Michael, which is like, it should be like, we kind of have the code and structure for that approach today. And it's a little bit more of the same. It's a few more YAML files. But what we don't have, and so because we don't have CI for our Helm chart, because we don't have, because we're not using, because we're doing direct YAML file manipulation today, it was like, oh, that felt like a natural path. Not that that was necessarily the best path, or like I think if we were already using Helm to manipulate Docker Compose, I would be making the argument for for Helm. And so, yeah, please don't concede to be nice, because I don't care. This doesn't. It's mostly just like, hey, Navindu, can you get this done in 2.5? Like, hey, we're going to make this release, and is this going to be included in the release that we're going to support context for Kubernetes? Yeah, that would be ideal. Okay, can you get that done? Okay, well, like if he starts on something that's a little bit newer, that was where it was. And who else somebody else has to say something, because I'm clearly undecided and not really providing any good points. So
I can bring more unrelated points. So what about having a dashboard, an admin portal, a separate service, or I don't know, from where we can install or update the Meshery?
Yeah,
in the Kubernetes cluster. So inception, I mean, is that inception? Have an admin portal dashboard, one that already exists, one that we can build, doesn't matter, from where we can install. and that one has more writing.
Yeah. The
And behind of it, it's just we don't need Helm.
Yeah, actually, in that case, if you're like, hey, pre-deployment, where's a marketplace for packages to install Kubernetes applications? Oh, well, those are Helm charts, like, which, yeah.
Then even if you have the Kubernetes dashboard or something where you can see your deployment, add a new deployment, and that one is first time Meshery, and then you can configure. You can, let's say, try a dummy install of Meshery, not dummy, easy from a dashboard. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, there are those dashboards, and you can provide them manifest files. Like, here's my
Yeah,
manifest.
one
And go
is exactly one. It's actually it's called like Kubernetes dashboard or something. It does need uh, on its to have out uh, that administration Kubernetes module. But yeah, or I don't know, or Pharos, or take a Kubernetes distribution, which I don't know to give more example. But yeah. So the thing is, have a dashboard where you can see your Kubernetes services, you can see your context or switch context, and yeah, just from there install the thing that you wanted to do with Helm, but don't do it with Helm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I would like to raise another point here. Uh, Basically, Lee, as you brought up, customize. So Helm and Customize are entirely different in terms of their use case as well. Basically, Customize is used where you want, if you wherever you want to generate it during compile time. But in our use case, it's all during runtime. So Helm would be one option, but again, the issue with Helm is that it's not an issue, but rather uh, we're not getting any much benefit out of Helm using Helm when compared to you just applying manifest. So basically, like how you said that values.yaml can be a central template or a central point of control to uh, feed in values. So that values.yaml can also be used to sort of templatize a manifest and then deploy. Like basically, except for that part, I don't think Helm is giving us any other advantage. So I'd say manifest is a better option because it's easier to implement. Easier to implement as in we do have a apply manifest functionality already. So
But regarding the same, actually, we have applied Helm chart functionality also in Meshery.
yeah, so like the negative argument was that except for values.yaml, we don't have any other benefit with Helm.
Yeah. And in Meshkit, we have those things, but the question is, what do we have in Meshery CTL, which is where this is going in? It's like, well, we have Viper, or, we have, I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, like how you said, values.yaml is what config.yaml is. So that negates the benefit.
nice. Okay. Well, over time, maybe we tie it off in Slack.
short question, Lee,
Yeah.
about Get Nightwalk. Get Nightwalk is the thing that it's part of the Meshery. What we talked, it was for me to get the Nightwalk build, right? Which
Right.
is partially not related with the Get Nightwalk.
Right. Well, I was just trying to build.
I didn't get any advance, but I will do for it from today till tomorrow. I might not have a Mac on what to build, but I will do it on Linux and or
Nice.
Windows and get to you with the feedback
Yeah,
tomorrow
thank
by
you.
this time.
Cool.
It's good like this. But
Yeah.
whatever I would be.
Thank you.
From what
Yeah,
I understand, it was to make the build, let's say outside build of Nightwalk, and then get back to do the CI thing with Martinez, I think, or something, or
Cool.
to see what more we can. I have my notes home.
Beautiful. Yep. Yeah, you got it right. Just trying to build Nighthawk, and yeah, tomorrow's CI meeting is a great place to chat about.
Perfect. I wanted to ask you when is the CI meeting, because I forgot the day when it is. I thought it was yesterday, but
Nope, it's tomorrow, every second and fourth Thursday.
okay. I don't have it in the calendar, but I'm sure I saw the invite couple of times, so probably it's somewhere. Okay,
Nice.
then it's tomorrow. Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you. All right. If that's it, or do we have anything else?
Lee, do you want me to give a quick update on Mishmap?
I do, except we should probably hold it either for the community meeting or next week's meeting, just because we're an hour and 10 minutes in. So yeah, if you would give everyone a cliffhanger.
Should I share my screen or just a few words?
I have a horrible time being really direct. Let's do it next week.
Okay, sure.
If we could, and that'd be great. Like, come one, come all, come see Meshmap next week. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I think. Hopefully, some progress. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for this, Shriti.
Okay. Vineet, I'll add you to the agenda so that you have a time and space to actually go talk about it. Apart from that, thank you everybody for coming in. That's it. Same time next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.